TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
And that burns your people out. We mentioned before, you end up at middle management kind of collided with a multiple initiatives of what's the most important thing. And that's the challenge, is that when we don't have focus and we don't have alignment, we see people that are end up wasting time and money and not getting the same level of results they would have if they were actually doing less to start with.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, I hope all is well with you today. It is another beautiful day here in North Carolina, and this episode is brought to you by our sponsors, Habit Stack, Ignite Management Services, and Liberty Strength. We're also brought to you this week by a brand new book from Diana Kokoska called Becoming More. You can't get to better until you get to different. These sponsors help me bring these shows to each and every week, so I encourage you to click on their links below and check them out. Also, I want to encourage you to join us on our growing YouTube channel. Search for Deep Leadership on YouTube for videos of all my interviews and exclusive content. Well, that is it. Today, we're going to be talking about how to focus and align your business priorities for greater success. And my guest this week is Chad Bareither. Chad is an operation management consultant and author of a brand new book called Improve Less: The Focus and Aligned Framework for Sustainable Continuous Improvement. We sat down and talked about what causes companies to miss their objectives. As it turns out, most companies are trying to do too many things. Chad helps us understand how to improve less in this thought-provoking conversation. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20 plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Chad Bareither. Chad is an operation management consultant who helps companies meet their improvement goals. He is owner and principal consultant at Bareither Group Consulting. He is the author of a brand new book called Improve Less: The Focus and Aligned Framework for Sustainable Continuous Improvement. I am excited to have him on the show to learn about this new framework. So Chad, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on.
It's good to meet you, and I'm excited to hear about this new book. It's brand new, and I'm really excited about this. But before we dive into the book, tell us a little bit about your background in continuous improvement.
Sure. I got my first exposure to even the term continuous improvement in what was at the time a new program being introduced to the U.S. Army. So I was serving as a civilian, an engineer working on weapons system development, and we were piloting a new program called Lean Six Sigma. And so never heard of it before, working as a quality engineer. There's statistics involved. I'm interested. So I took the class, was trained and certified as a green belt. And then at the time was also pursuing a secondary advanced degree in statistics. So they asked me, do you want to come on to the team and help us deliver some of the black belt training? I said, problem, I'm not a black belt. They said, well, let's get you trained and certified. So trained and certified as a black belt. I mean, suffice it to say, I found my niche pretty early on in my career, and I loved this stuff. Then coaching and mentoring projects, traveling around to different facilities, helping them solve operational challenges. Then I had the opportunity to work for 3 other companies after that, all Fortune 500, and parlayed that into what I do now, is really focusing on operations management consulting in kind of the small to medium-sized manufacturing business realm.
So what exactly do you do at your company? I know you talk about, supporting operations and what have you, but what do you do and what do companies come to you specifically for? Like what's unique about what you offer to in the way you help companies?
Yeah, so I think the unique approach that we take is the partnering of versus traditional consulting where I'm going to give you the answers, let you do all the work. It's like I'm going to walk through the process with those leaderships. I'm very interested in developing the capability, the skill set to leave behind. And that's really where this entire focus and align framework approach came from, is that if we start with the end in mind, what I saw even in very large organizations, what we struggled with was sustainment of our improvements. So anytime you make an improvement, you have to change something. So if we need to change something, there's a change management component. And then on the back end, there's a sustainment component. And that's largely the responsibility of leadership. So if we can't metabolize that much change, I ask the question, well, why are we trying to improve so much? Maybe we should try to improve less and make sure we get the results we want.
So I assume that's where the title of the book comes from, Improve Less.
Exactly.
So what you're saying is that we should focus on sustaining the gains versus just keep adding on another program. Is that generally what you're saying?
Yeah. So if we make the, not even assumption, if we just learn from experience and we see that after making a change, the results are only stabilized if we focus on sustainment, right? So that change has to be nurtured until it becomes routine behavior, until it becomes a habit. And that doesn't happen overnight. So if we can't put that effort into the sustainment, we can keep pushing more and more changes down the pipe, but that infant change that went through is not going to sustain. So if that was a very important thing for us to accomplish, we've just overwhelmed it with additional changes where that's now been minimized. It's been diminished in terms of its importance. So if we start with that end in mind, that we are going to need to sustain this, and we look back up and we say, well, now that changes a little bit of the landscape of saying, well, how much effort, how much can we change at one time, knowing that there's going to be this bolus of work on the back end to actually sustain and coach and teach the organization about it.
When I'm hearing this, all I can think of is like I've led a lot of different manufacturing businesses, and I am guilty as charged of the guy that is really was poor at like allowing us to get to a new plateau level and taking a break and like you say, sustaining that performance. I was always chasing the next shiny metal object for a lot of my career. It's like, okay, well, we got that. We got whatever, we got an ISO 9000 certification. Great, check the box. Okay, now we're going to go after this. Now we're going to go after this. And so I was constantly pushing the organization on every different front. And I know at one time, one of my managers said, hey, can we slow down just a little bit? Like you're so far up ahead of us that we're having a hard time keeping up. And, you don't ever stop, take the time to celebrate a win. You're just off to the next shiny metal object. And I saw that a lot in my corporate careers, that we were just chasing so many different programs, that you had maybe, I don't know, 8 to 10 programs in some various stage of being launched at any point in time, to the point where we weren't focused. We weren't working on the things that were most important. We were working on everything else, it seemed like. Is that what you see when you talk to a lot of companies?
I do, especially as you start to grow and the complexity increases and you have all these initiatives. And I've spoken to people, when you're sitting in that middle management layer and you have 5 different people asking for, I just need one person to be on sub-team X and one person on sub-team Y. And pretty soon you're like, well, I have 10 people and you just asked for 5 of them. How am I supposed to run the business? Yeah. I mean, there's a reality of saying we do still need to deliver for our customers and make these changes. The other perspective to look at it is one of wasted effort. So there's a very popular continuous improvement philosophy that's called theory of constraints. And theory of constraints would say you identify your bottleneck, you optimize that, exploit that first, and then the bottleneck usually moves somewhere else. There's a 5-step process. We don't need to go in all that here.
Yeah.
But suffice it to say, if you have a process and you're optimizing steps, making them faster, making them cheaper, whatever, and it's not the bottleneck, the plant, the site, the company actually doesn't see a benefit from that.
Yeah.
And so why are we wasting all those calories right now making improvements that this one process can't keep up with? So can we focus down to, and it doesn't mean you have to move slow, right? You can move quickly if you're focused, quickly and tactically, and say, if we improve that, great. The answer is not no to all those other improvements. Maybe it's just not yet. If we can get this solved first, focus on this problem first, then does it become more evident where we need to go after that?
I love this philosophy because I think we are inundated, especially I would say in the business environment we exist today. We got so many things coming at us from an external standpoint, especially if you're like you said, you're a little bit bigger, a little more complex, and you're dealing with all the internal issues that you're dealing with. Then you're also dealing with COVID and supply chain challenges and all these things that are coming at you. That I think that we lose track. I always say leadership is motivating a group of people to accomplish a goal. We never work on those three things. We don't work on motivation, people, and goal. We're working on everything else. And I think that's where we get a little bit frustrated. Our employees get frustrated. Our employees, they're no longer engaged because there's too many things that they're working on. And so I think part of the job of a leader is to prioritize and say, this is the bottleneck. We need to work on this. Don't worry about that right now. Let's focus. And I think that's part of the job of the leader is to sort of help prioritize the people, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And there's some risk in that, right? Because it's unknown. So it's not uncommon that leaders will hedge their bets. Like, well, if I don't know this is the one most important thing, I'm going to start these 5 things. And one of those should help me. But if we take the diligence and the discipline as the leader, so let's do the analysis, make our best estimate and say, this is where I am putting my chips down. Man, that it's way easier to rally your team behind that, right? And say, like, this is what we want to accomplish, and this is what's the most important thing right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. So the book is called Improve Less. What inspired you to get this book written and get it out to the publishers, and now you have it in your hand? What inspired you to do it?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I started writing for me, right, to look at my approach, and I had been delivering for clients. And certain things I was coming in at different points, but certain things were always consistent. And there was always this frustration of, like, when I was still in corporate, but how do we make sure it's still there 2 years from now? And so I'm like, well, how would I design the process if I could, and I can design it now, if I could design the process, how would I design the engagement? So I started writing down for myself what that would look like. Then I said, oh, I should turn this into a PDF and, like, put it on my website for customers to look at. And I was meeting with a coach, and they read it and they said, this is a book. And so I'm like, like a book? Okay. So now I will admit, I know you've written as well. That process to go from, like, words on a page to book is not, like, quite as linear as I thought it was going to be.
Yes. Yeah. But I think that's it's I wrote my books later in life, and I was like an old dog in new tricks, and it was fun. I mean, I got a chance to meet a lot of people. I talked to a lot of authors during the process. I actually hired a writing coach, and you're right. It's like a complete unknown if you've never done it before. But once you do it, you're like, oh, well, I'm an author now, and it's like you do something that's very difficult and you've never done it before. And just like anything else, you stink at it in the beginning. And then eventually you figure out, oh, okay, I can do this. This is something can be done. So yeah, well, congratulations. And when does the book come out?
On October 3rd.
Oh, wow.
So next week.
Yeah, that's
we're recording.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. So we touched on a little bit. So what's the problem with a lack of focus and a lack of alignment within an organization?
We've been dancing around it, but if we get specific, so when we lack focus, you end up wasting your time and in some cases losing customers. In a service business, you might hear things like niching down, right? If I don't have a focus on who I'm trying to serve, I'm trying to be everything to everyone. Okay, so now take that into your operations. If we're trying to do everything for everyone, well, what are we focused on really improving now? Like, what's the most important thing for us to improve? And so we end up spreading our efforts, kind of thinly dabbling in everything, and it's a waste of time and potentially it impacts your ability to serve your customers. So that's if we don't have focus. Now, if we do have focus and we can't get alignment, so now cross-functionally agree, like, that's what we're going to go after, well, now it's costing you money. Now I have different, fiefdoms and or silos that are championing their own initiatives, and that burns your people out. We mentioned before, you end up at middle management kind of collided with multiple initiatives of what's the most important thing and having resources here. So that's the challenge, is that when we don't have focus and we don't have alignment, we see people that are ended up wasting time and money and not getting the same level of results they would have if they were actually doing less to start with.
Yeah, that's and working on less and working on the right things versus working on many things, some of which may never amount to anything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this, you call it the Focus and Align framework. Explain a little bit about what the framework is and just so people can understand the basics of it.
Yeah, so the framework is a 5-step process, and within those processes, there's some tailoring, right? But it's a 5-step process to implement what are the key tools of a foundational management system for your operations, right? So it's a process to implement tools to build the system. And that's really it. Rather than starting with the end in mind and saying, well, let's just build a new business management system, we use this process. And again, we build it around a goal. So we don't just say, well, let's just build you a management system because everyone should have a management system. What we do is we build that around a goal and say, okay, this is the goal you want to achieve. Here's the process we're going to follow. And at the end of it, you're going to have a system in place to manage that goal. So that's going to put us through the process improvement, but also build the infrastructure for daily management and process confirmation so that once we achieve that goal, we don't drift off of it.
So what does it look like in reality? Is it like a sort of a management dashboard, or is it KPIs? Is it having a team in place that's focused on making sure this doesn't, fall out? Are there sort of key indicators, like leading indicators that you can sort of watch? I don't know. I'm just curious to know that, when it's all said and done, what does it kind of look like for the management team?
Yeah, so for the management team, we have a top-level goal or objective. So our strategy is outlined in a framework that's objectives, goals, strategies, and measures. So that's what we want to accomplish in words, what we want to accomplish in numbers, how we're going to get there in words, how we're going to get there in numbers. So that cascades through a tool that we use, which is called a KPI, Key Performance Indicator tree. And that is unique to every business. I don't have a boilerplate KPI tree that says, this is the management system you're going to create. How do you run your business? How do you achieve these different requirements? And then we cascade that through for ownership depending upon function and level in the organization. The part that you mentioned at the end of the dashboard, yes, eventually this comes to some sort of daily management with a visual management component to that, where we say, if this is a key metric that's indicative of this process to deliver a requirement to support the goal, we should be talking about that on a regular basis. So we do build some sort of dashboard. Sometimes it's a whiteboard on the production floor.
Yes.
Sometimes it is a digital touchscreen on a Microsoft Surface Hub. The level of technology and implementation doesn't really matter. The concept is the same. That we identify the leading indicator metrics that tell us if our processes are operating correctly and that we should be predicting of hitting our goal. And then we run that playbook through it's called the Deming cycle, plan, do, check, and act. So on that cadence, we're reviewing our performance and then daily problem solving to make sure, how do we right the ship to make sure that we're still heading in the direction of the goal.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Leadership skills are like any other skills. You need to practice them to get better at them. Best-selling leadership author John S. Rennie knows this. That's why he's written a new book called You Have the Watch. It's a guided journal for leaders designed to take you through an entire year of leadership training. By the end of the year, you will master 50 of the most important leadership skills. If you want to have a greater impact on the results and people in your organization, go to youhavethewatch.com and pick up your copy today.
This episode is brought to you by Habit Stack. Effective leaders make a habit of working on important goals, no matter how busy they feel. Habit Stack software helps leadership teams build that habit. The system guides you to set crystal clear goals, align your tasks to those goals, and make progress every week. I use Habit Stack and I absolutely love it. It's such an easy tool to use, and I love how it reinforces the right habits with my leadership team. Habit Stack is free to use. It's so simple that you get the hang of it in just 5 minutes. Go to habitstack.com to get started. Is your mindset sabotaging your success? Do you long to be more, do more, have more, and maybe even give more? Then you need to get this new book from Diana Kokoska called Becoming More You Can't Get to Better Until You Get to Different. This book provides a step-by-step guide for you to move from your natural, resistant, limited way of thinking to a highly focused, productive, and liberating way of life. Becoming More is now available on Amazon, or go to becomingmorebook.com for bulk orders and more information.
This episode is brought to you by Ignite Management Services. Ignite is led by Mike Watson, who you might remember from episode 137. Mike and his team believe that everything starts with leadership. Whether it's strategy execution or cultural transformation, it's the role of the leader to create the conditions for their people to succeed. The team at Ignite can help you develop critical habits to enhance your leadership capability and transform your business. Ignite Management is now offering the Resilient Leadership Assessment Tool. This is an online questionnaire designed to assess and guide leadership development, coaching, and team building. It provides leaders an opportunity to gain insights into their leadership strengths and development needs. After taking this assessment, you will receive a custom, detailed report that provides practical and actionable recommendations to enhance your effectiveness. I have taken this assessment myself and found it to be extremely valuable in helping me make changes to my leadership approach. Right now, Ignite is offering 15% off the price of this tool to the deep leadership audience. Go to ignitemanagement.ca and enter the code START15 at checkout to get started today. This episode is brought to you by Jeremy Clevenger at Liberty Strength. As a high-performing leader, you know that leadership isn't about telling people what to do, it's about leading by example. And for most people, the one area that they are lacking when it comes to leading by example is their health and fitness. By improving your health and fitness, every other area of your life improves. Your energy skyrockets, your sleep improves, your confidence increases, and more. But how can you get and stay fit as a busy leader? Well, you do what you've always done. You hire the best people for the job. Don't struggle on your own. Put Liberty Strength in your corner. Jeremy and his team will work with you to take your physique, mindset, nutritional habits, and more to the next level with his step-by-step, all-inclusive coaching program. I've worked with Liberty Strength for the past 2 years, and I'm in the best shape of my life, and I'm still hitting strength personal records at 56 years old. If you want to step up your game, reach out to Jeremy at libertystrengthtx.com to find out more and get your initial consultation scheduled with him today.
I absolutely love this. I love that you said whiteboard, because one of the things that people get confused when they hear lean manufacturing, they think you got to spend a lot of money, you've got to have lights and digital displays and all this sort of thing. But that's not how the Japanese put it in place. During the early days of the Toyota production system, it was all like, let's do with what we have. And so whiteboards, they didn't have whiteboards there, but like cork boards were the thing, right? They didn't spend a lot of money. And, as an example, I ran one manufacturing plant. And one of the things that we struggle with is that when I first took over, is that everything was shipped at the last week of the month, right? It was just sheer panic. Last week of the month, everybody's running around, and it was chaos. And the quality dropped, the productivity dropped, the amount of defects and scrap. And so it was chaos. So one of the primary goals that I had was to equalize the shipments throughout the month. So we would actually track our revenue per month, right? And it used to always be, a hockey stick. And I was like, no, we're going to do it every day. But one of the things I did was I had a daily stand-up meeting, and we had these two giant whiteboards that were put together, and had our entire production schedule. We had goals for every day, and every team leader had to talk about what they did that day, or what they did the previous day, and what they were going to do this day. So the team leaders were accountable for, making the daily numbers and talking about if they have challenges. We in those meetings we'd talk about it, but the only thing we cared about was that graph being a straight line and not a hockey stick. And so everybody was focused on it, and we had the tools to do it, and we did it, and we did it consistently, because it was like we could have worked on scrap, we could have worked on all these other things but the root cause was us pushing everything to the end of the month. And so I imagine through this process, you're going to find the one big item like this it's gonna change everything, right?
Yeah. So we start with one, right? Just like we said, but why try to move the needle on 5 until we're good at it? Because it is a muscle memory. Even things like daily stand-up meetings. people will challenge that at first. Why do we have to meet daily? It's like the first question I always get.
Right.
So rather than like take a strictly tool-based approach of it and just say, start meeting daily. Well, because I asked the question, well, what are you going to talk about every day? In this method, we start with the goal in mind. So now it's a visual and it's easy for leadership to communicate. The reason that we're tracking that in your case, the reason we're tracking shipments per day is because this is the problem that we're having and we're trying to prevent. Okay, got it. That's why we're going to talk about it. And that's why it's important. And that's the one thing that we're going to focus on. So absolutely, it's a great example. And we build that into the process, not to say you need daily stand-up. It's like by the time we get there, it's like, well, we need some sort of daily management system to track this.
Yeah.
There's different ways to implement that, and we can talk about that, but we need to be putting our finger on the pulse of this process every day.
I just absolutely love it. And it's shifting, it's mind shifting, because you see, like when I know a lot of times in corporate, we go look at best practices. Oh, best practice, they have daily stand-up meetings. Well, we should have daily stand-up meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Should we? I mean, what's the goal of our business, and how does that help us achieve a goal? If it's part of the solution, then maybe. I love what you're talking about there is let's not do it for the sake of because everybody else is doing it. Does it make sense in our business? What are the things that we need to be working on? What is the one thing that if we focus on this, we can meet our objectives? And so, now I understand the title of the book, Improve Less. So focus on the one or two few things. So what's it take to implement a framework like this? So take us through, like if you're meeting with a management team, we started the discussion. Are there aha moments when the leadership team goes, oh, well, this is what we should be doing, or and they realize that maybe they're working on too many things, or maybe take us through what it's like when you're implementing it.
Sure. So I'll go through the five steps in the process are why, what, how, who, and when. Right. So they're just 5 questions that we need to answer. So that first question sometimes isn't that easy for leadership to answer. Why do we need to improve? And there may be differing opinions in there. So the first thing we need to do is focus and align, even at a leadership level, saying like, well, what are we trying to accomplish? So we do back them all the way up to, admittedly, early in my career, I thought like mission and vision statements were very, very woo-woo-y. But honestly, if we can't align at a leadership team about like, why do we exist as a business and what are we trying to accomplish for the future state of our business and our customer that we serve? If we're not aligned there, it's going to be very difficult to align. So what's the most important thing to work on right now? So we step all the way back to that. And sometimes that's a little bit where the aha first hits of saying, oh, we weren't even aligned on what we're trying to get after. So why would an improvement goal or an improvement program, right, or Lean or Six Sigma training help us if we can't even talk to our people in the same language? So that's where the second thing is when we get into the what and the how. So once we identify that goal, using this approach we have of a key performance indicator tree of clearly showing them, look, even within your business, there's 38 things, pick a number, 38 things you can work on. You don't need to work on all of them. Which ones either don't have a defined process, or the process is underperforming, or the control doesn't work? Now I've really narrowed my set down to it. You say, well, we do have standard processes for half this stuff. Great. Then you probably don't need to work on it right now.
Right.
Let's shore up the foundation of all the processes that are not defined, and all those ones that you say are defined, keep tracking them. Great. We're going to work that into the end of the who and the when as well. So those are really the 2 big aha moments we have up front of really forcing the team to like take a step back and get aligned rather than just deploy, death by random improvement. What was a friend?
I've done that in my career, by the way.
A friend of mine that I'm networked with, he had said that on a different podcast, and it stuck with me. It was like an epidemic of random improvement, which is just like running around trying to improve stuff that maybe doesn't matter. So getting over that is the first big aha. And then really the how of drilling down and saying, we don't have to fix everything right now. Like, what are the really important things to focus on? Now I can actually have, even though continuous improvement is a lifelong journey, I can have a short horizon of improvement to say like, this is my next step. Get these processes in place, make these improvements, and then revisit it.
I would imagine if as a company goes through this and they're able to, really boil it down to what's most important for his team to be working on, what's the most important measure of performance to meet their overall goal, and then everybody's aligned towards that, I imagine life gets a little easier versus everybody running around chasing. It seems like the never-ending, the continuous improvement programs and trying to chase all these things. Does that, in your experience, when you do have this alignment and you are working on the right things, what's it like? What's the atmosphere like in the company?
Yeah, well, it should and it does. Right. So in a recent engagement I was on just, it's almost a year ago now, in this fall, just some verbatims I was getting back was, it's a lot easier to hand things off when I have a system. So now we have leaders saying before they thought like they needed to take everything on because they didn't know how to prioritize for their folks. Now we have a system and clear information flow for them. That's fantastic. The other thing is a leader saying, I go to as many meetings as I can, or else I don't know when I'll hear about it. Oh, wow. What a disaster that like you don't trust the organization to manage their own processes or that you will get the information you need at the right time. So we have leaders that are running around taking on more responsibility, taking in as much information as they can because they're worried that a mistake's going to be made. But the reason that a mistake might be made is because there's not a management system in place to support them. They're doing heroics. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Save the day. And that's not sustainable.
No, not at all. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny because I write in my books, one analogy from my Navy days is I say run to the fire, which means that if you have a problem in your organization, your leader is responsible to take care of that problem so it doesn't get out of control. The problem is if you're running to fires, it's that when you're firefighting every day, then you're out of control, right? So the goal is to have a fire every once in a while that a leader has to say, whoa, we've got a real problem here, but it shouldn't be a day-to-day effort. If there's heroics happening, if you're trying to be the hero and save the day, then you're not doing your job as a leader. You haven't built the systems and the structure to be able to have continuous improvement, sustainable results. You're running around trying to make it happen through heroics. And that's not good for your health. It's not good for your employees. The stress level goes through the roof. I think that that is not a good way to run the business for sure.
So, and another perspective to take on this, right, is that as a leader, one of the most important things I'm doing is setting up my successor for success, right? Is that old adage of working yourself out of a job. But am I really trying to make myself, if I step back, and part of this is where some of the coaching and leader awareness needs to come in as well. There's the softer skills of behavior and culture and leadership awareness as well that need to come along with this process. That if I'm really more worried about what I look like in my performance versus setting the company up for success, right? Those can be conflicting viewpoints as well. So really the leader's job is to be building the system and building and developing the people underneath them so they can step up into that role. Man, if they had a system where the business almost ran on autopilot, how much easier for the person to come behind and say, I can take the wheel, I can handle that.
Wow. That's really eye-opener, especially for small business owners that maybe they want to pass their business on to the children someday, or maybe they want to sell their business someday. If they've got a system or a process, it's going to be much easier to be able to, deal with the next group of people that come on. But the other thing too is I think you're right on target with, the role of the leader is not just the day-to-day firefighting, right? It is to build the systems, build the processes, and to train up the successors, and essentially put themselves out of a job. And too many entrepreneurs I've talked with are they're running around trying to be heroes versus putting that system in place. And the thing is, and what ends up happening is when that person goes away, the company falls apart because it's all held together through heroics. And that's so entrepreneurs, if you're listening in, don't be a hero in your business. Build your systems. Make it easy on your life for sure. Absolutely. One thing I was going to ask you, a lot of people say Lean and Six Sigma. Well, that's for manufacturing businesses only. So tell us about the system that you have here. Is it just for manufacturing business or is it for all types of business?
Well, so next week I'll be presenting at a conference with a colleague that's in health and human services. So also applies in that vein. At that same track, they'll be talking about higher education and healthcare, and of course, manufacturing. But if I just talk about health and human services for a second, look, there's the process that needs to be followed. Consistent process gets consistent results. And when you take some of that process away and then you wonder why you get inconsistent results, it's pretty eye-opening to say, well, because we drifted from the process. So now our results aren't predictable. And some of these services are providing essential needs to the community. Like if you can't be financially viable and responsible, you're not going to stick around. So it also works in areas like that. I've done work in the utility industry, field service, right? Where, okay, that's not manufacturing, but there's a standard process. Yeah, you're outside. So weather, terrain, neighbors, right? There's a lot of variations that you have, but still, there's so much of that, the prep for the job, the design reviews, that there's so much that can be standardized, and we're just trying to reduce variation so that the job is predictable. And so to say it only applies in manufacturing doesn't hold up. And I think we were talking, was that before we started record, talking about
it was before, yeah.
Our R&D and transition into manufacturing. And if research and development is going to miss time points by 20, 30% of schedule, how can you say, well, that's just because that's R&D? No, that's a miss on the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So listeners, when you're hearing this stuff and you think, well, Lean and Six Sigma, that doesn't really apply to me. I've got a service business, or I've got, pizzeria I'm running, or I've got a call center, or what have you. Yeah, these all work standard processes, basically making sure your team is working on the right things. This works for all types of businesses. This has been fantastic, Chad. Chad, I was going to say, what final message would you like to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, it is, if you're going to pursue improvement, process improvement, continuous improvement, whatever you want to call it, Lean Six Sigma, just pause and start a little bit with the end in mind of how much effort it's going to be to implement and sustain. And then maybe pare back, make sure that your eyes are bigger than your stomach. You're going to have to metabolize all that change. So you get better at it, right? So as you've done it over and over again, you understand how to implement and sustain. So then you can take on more. But if you just start off with let's get everything on the table, it actually leads to disengagement. Now people don't trust the program, or they put forward an idea for improvement and nothing happened. And how much better to say, start with less, execute, show the results, and then build a little bit of consensus in your team.
That is some common sense wisdom for this podcast. We want to improve less. When I first saw the title of the book, I didn't understand it, but after spending a half hour with you, I get it. We need to be focused on the right things and not running around like chickens with our heads cut off, which is what a lot of people are doing. And we don't want that. So we want to improve less. So Chad, how can people find out more about this brand new book, your company, and other things that are going on with your company?
So I tested this earlier today. So if you just search in a search engine, Improve Less Book, I think I come up as the number one result right now. Improve Less Book is actually the book page. It's on our website. So even from that, then you can navigate to other portions of the website to find out about the company. For those active on social media, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So you can just look up my name. John, you can help them put a link in the show notes so they can find that there. But if you go now and you search Improve Less Book in your search engine of choice, it should be your top option, Bareither Group Consulting.
Fantastic. We're going to put links to the show notes for the book, for his company, for LinkedIn, so you can reach out. And again, listeners, if you're listening to this and you're saying, I need this in my life, you're going to have a contact for Chad right here in the link. Reach out to him and say, tell me more. I need this in my life. I need to get organized. I'm running around like a crazy person trying to solve all these problems. I need some focus. Chad's going to help you do that, and this book is going to help you do it. So I highly encourage you to click on the links below and find out more about this book. Find out more about the idea of improve less. I love it. Now that I've heard it, I get it. And now I'm thinking about my own business. What am I working on right now? I think I'm working on too many things right now in my business. So I need to improve less as well. So this is really good. Chad, thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for writing this book. I think it's really important. And thanks for sharing all this information with our listeners.
No, thanks for having me on. It's been great.
I really appreciate it. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
Hey there, fabulous souls. I'm Stephanie Baklaan.
And I'm Eden Alpert.
And we're the hosts of the brand new podcast, Unapologetically Fab.
Get ready to join us on an amazing and real journey as we dive into life after 40 and own it.
We're all about changing the narrative, leaning into who you are, and living a life by your own design.
Join us as we embrace life unapologetically and redefine success.
This is Unapologetically Fab,
an Electric Cast production.
See you there.
Electricast.
Welcome to the Reverie channel, where entertainment knows no bounds. Live concerts, on-demand music, documentaries, and short films, all in stunning HD. Now on Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Immerse yourself from home. And on Android and iOS for those on the move. Support creators with crowdfunding donations. Fuel their creativity. Join us in shaping entertainment's future. The Reverie channel, where every view, every donation matters.